different to what the Supreme Court did in McQueen, okay? And you as a private citizen, you certainly can do what you choose to do, but I'm more than a private citizen. I'm a public official, and I also have duties and obligations and an oath I've taken, unlike you. And so I have to abide by that as well. I just can't ignore it and just say, well, you know, I can just look the other way. Because you know what? You may have a vested interest in this particular issue, but you know what? Bet your bottom dollar there's going to be other cases and other decisions by the Supreme Court on other areas of criminal law that maybe you agree with. And what if I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to look the other way and not follow the law there, you know, for whatever reason. And I think you, and rightfully so, would be very upset with me because I was not doing my job. I was violating my oath. And you would be right.
Well, that's what's happening with the 94 signs. How could you ignore that kind of prosecution?
That's right.
Going on in our community?
You can ignore one thing, but not the other.
Well, I'm not ignoring that. And as I said to you before, if you have information, I'd be happy to talk to you about that further. And I'm also aware under the, with the federal government, their U.S. Attorney's Office, along with their Immigration Department, is also working on that as well. But I'm certainly willing to work on it. I've been a prosecutor now almost 4 months. So I can't say I've got everything under control, although I'm trying to do my best, ma'am. Okay?
Is advertising for prostitution legal or illegal?
Well,
It doesn't say prostitution.
So you do know the billboards.
Although I don't travel on 94 that much, but yes.
My question is, with them, we voted against having a city manager come in, okay? And
Yes.
he went ahead and he rewrote a bill and he shoved it down their throats anyway.
Yes.
And now they can come in, they can remove you, they can remove everybody from the elected position. How do you feel about this issue? Do you think this is a constitutional issue where they're coming in and everybody that we voted for is gone, and some guy comes in and takes over? So how do you feel about that? Do you think that's a constitutional issue, state constitutional issue?
Yeah, you raise an excellent point. Certainly, as citizens, if we vote for someone, that's who we expect to be in office. And you know, I was surprised that happened, but you know, that's what's happened. So you make an excellent point. I agree with that. But you know, that's the law that the legislature has passed right now.
Is anybody contesting?
You know, let's say they had not passed that law. You know, ultimately, what should happen is that the state of Michigan would not give money to that city which is having financial problems and let them go into bankruptcy. And then we do have state statutes that say that they go into receivership, and it goes that route. It's a longer process, but we do have laws in place for that. So, I mean, your point's well taken. That's correct.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Any other questions? If someone were to teach jury education in Jackson County, was there any possibility they would be prosecuted for jury tampering?
Yay.
Good question. Certainly, if they're exercising their First Amendment rights under the Constitution, peacefully, civilly, they certainly can. But if they are trying to talk to jurors in a case that's going on right now, absolutely not. That would be tampering. But if someone's not on a jury, they're not actively serving as a juror, or they're not been called to jury service, they're just doing their business, you certainly can talk to them peacefully, just like you would any other topic. Right.
Courthouse.
That would be fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we would be able to protest outside the courthouse with jury nullification signs?
You certainly can protest peacefully outside the courthouse. And I suppose if you wanted to do that, you certainly could. However,
Don't put their name or anything like that on it.
Just jury nullification.
well, you certainly can protest, you know, things that aren't asking people to physically harm anyone or threaten to harm people. But clearly, jury nullification is not recognized by law, but certainly you can protest that if you want to, or you can protest something you think is not.
Like no victim, no crime.
If you agree a law is something that is not correct, you certainly can protest that. And in fact, you have here in Jackson County.
Yes,
I
we
can attest to
have.
that.
We're good at that.
And we like to
I think-
protest.
And I think that's great. I mean, that's part of our country, it's part of our Constitution, it's part of the First Amendment. As long as it's done, peacefully, that's fine.
Can we pass out pamphlets at the courthouse door?
Well, I guess you're starting to draw, hairs here, or split hairs as to what you can do. As long as you're not, bothering people, I suppose it depends. If you're blocking someone's path to go into the courthouse because they won't take your pamphlet, I think you've got a problem.
That's
But
not going to happen.
if you're there peacefully, and you're not, obstructing people on the sidewalk, I guess that's one thing. The key thing is, you're exercising your right, it's done in a peaceful manner, a civil manner, you're being polite to people who have to come and go to that courthouse for whatever matters they're there for. Yes?
We've got a Second Amendment question here. Do you consider federal legislation prohibiting high-capacity magazines or certain types of weapons to be an infringement of the Second Amendment?
Good question. Well, if you take a strict view of the Second Amendment, then Congress can't be making laws to prohibit arms. The question is, we've taken steps already in this country to limit certain types of weapons. Certainly, assault rifles have been banned in the past for a few years, and then it was lifted. My position would be, I'm going to uphold the Constitution, including the right to bear arms, and that includes, weapons. Okay? If the Congress, passes law that bans certain weapons, then that's the law, then I'm going to follow the law. Okay? Obviously, though, technically, if you follow the law, if it's an automatic weapon that has a high-capacity magazine, or it's a handgun, or it's a rifle, or a shotgun, certainly those are firearms. I think the Constitution allows. But if Congress, comes forward and says we're going to limit certain types of weapons, then I'm going to follow the law.
Okay, but the question was, would you consider that an infringement of the Second Amendment?
That Congress is limiting that right? I would say that, yes, that if you're limiting guns, and here's why I say that. There's different arguments about that, but, well, what are you going to use an assault rifle for? You can use it for, recreational use. What's the use of that? Certainly that's a compelling argument, but really, if you read strictly the Second Amendment, it doesn't really answer that question there. In our country, statistically, most shooting deaths are because of handguns, not because of assault rifles. I think it's overwhelmingly handguns. And so, interestingly enough, of all the debate you may have heard the last several weeks, there's no talk about, banning handguns, because most of the handguns are used pretty frequently. It's not assault rifles, if you look at the statistics. So theoretically speaking, yes. I mean, the Second Amendment covers weapons, and that would include assault rifles, or that would include high-capacity magazines.
I respect your opinion on that, because we're not gonna take them on with pea shooters if we have a militia. We're gonna need assault rifles. I mean, really, if the UN comes in and they invoke martial law on us and none of us want it, and they start screwing with us, all as citizens. We're not gonna take them on. We're not gonna take them on.
Assault rifles are still illegal.
Well, I know, but we need
Six.
them.
The ones that they're talking about banning back in '94 and then the sunset in 2004 are not assault rifles. They're just simply cosmetic differences between an assault rifle and a typical AR.
Yeah, I've got an
Yes.
AR-15, it's not an assault
Yes.
weapon.
What's
It's a ri-
that?
I've got an AR-15, it's not an assault
It is
weapon.
not an assault rifle, that's correct.
Yeah, it's a hunt gun. And it discourages people from coming in my house.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Going once, going twice, sold, it's sold.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you gonna ask him if you can get the stuff out of the market?